Welcome to Cambridge. It's nearly spring and some of the orchids are beginning to show lots of signs of life after looking a little bit sort of as if they're biding their time over the winter. The first orchid that I wanted to show you today is this Pleurothallis truncata. Comes from South America in quite high altitudes where it grows cool and moist. When I bought it about 6 or 7 years ago, it was just a small plant in a pot, and I kept it in the pot for a couple of years and then transferred it to this quite large cork mount. And the reason was that I'd seen a plant grown just like this at a show, and to me it looked just the perfect way of growing it because the growths all come out looking in the same direction. And then when it flowers, you get this sort of cascade of beautiful pendant flowers coming down. This is, of course, just how it would grow in the wild. And for me, it's done really well. You can see if I turn it round, you can see the roots have gone all the way around the mount and formed a really good root system, which, of course, is always the secret to getting orchids growing and performing really well. The great thing about it is that although the flowers are tiny, there's this really arresting, vibrant orange which shows up really well against the dark foliage. And you get a succession of flowers coming from the centre of the leaves, which then fall down in front of the leaves, I think, very elegantly. I expect you'll notice that most of the flowers at the moment are on this side of the plant because the main source of light is in this direction towards the east, and there are far fewer flowers on this side of the plant. This year it seems to be particularly pronounced. Last year I remember it being much sort of fuller all over, but that doesn't really bother me because there are some new flower buds just beginning to come on this side of the plant, so I would expect it to be looking good for about at least 6 weeks. I keep it cool over in this sort of corner of the greenhouse, which I consider the coolest. I dunk it in water with a feed-in once a week, and then it gets sprayed most days with rainwater. But it's quite an easy plant to grow and very reliable, and although at the moment it hasn't been sprayed yet today, I was getting ready for this filming, and the moss is barely damp. It doesn't bother me because, unlike a lot of orchids that need to be kept moist, this one's actually quite forgiving. So it's a very easy plant to grow, and I think it's a really good plant to have if you've got cool, moist conditions. And then the other plant that I thought was really worth showing you today is this Dendrobium moniliforme. And like many dendrobiums, they appreciate a cool, fairly dry winter rest. This came from a friend of mine in Cambridge who's also a very enthusiastic orchid grower, and we tend to sort of swap plants, which is great. He gave it to me in a small plastic pot, which I left it in for a couple of years. But I must admit, I had trouble with some of the flowers aborting, and I think it was because the root system wasn't as healthy as it could be. So last spring, I did what I do to quite a lot of my orchids that are doing okay, but I think could do better. And I put it on a cork mount. And you can see that it has since formed a really good root system. And this year, I'm pleased to say, all the flower buds have been developing and coming out beautifully. The flowers are supposed to, the original reason that I was attracted to having one of these dendrobiums was that the flowers are supposed to be scented. Well, the friend who gave it to me thinks that they're quite strongly scented of coconut. For me, I can hardly smell anything. It has a sort of faint, pleasant, sort of sweet scent, but I wouldn't say that it's anything that I would sort of really extol the virtues of. However, the point is that scent is very much a personal thing, and the particular sense that some people can detect strongly, others can't. So I think one must always be careful of accepting somebody's word when it comes to saying that an orchid isn't scented. Anyway, it's a delightful little species, and you'll notice that this one's got a bit of a kink in it where the new growth, I think soon after I mounted it, must have got a bit caught up and distorted, but that doesn't really matter. So I'm hoping that in the next few years this will develop into really quite a big plant. And then the final orchid that I wanted to bring attention to today is this Coelogyne intermedia. I've had this for many years, and each year it got bigger and bigger because it's a very vigorous going variety, very easy. And it became so big that last year I had to chop it into several bits, and I've given bits away to other people in the local Cambridge Orchid Society. And in fact you can see, as a result of chopping it about a bit, some of the pseudo bulbs are all sort of higgledy-piggledy, which slightly offends my eye. And this year it's got 1, 2, 3 flower spikes, which means that it's not the most magnificent specimen. However, next year, when it's had a chance to grow and formed a clump of more pseudo bulbs, it will once again look more natural, fuller, and hopefully have more flowers. Now, Coelogyne intermedia is a beautiful, easy, cool grain orchid to grow. The flowers have a lovely, sort of rich, I don't know how you'd say, sort of slightly spicy, slightly sweet scent about them, as rather similar to many Coelogynes. This is the variety with lemony yellow flowers as opposed to some with sort of deeper markings, and I think this is one of the most beautiful. And I grow it, in fact it's kept really pretty moist most of the year. A lot of Coelogynes, if in doubt, I would say, especially the cool growing ones, keep them on the moist side. It's also quite shady because I've got a bench over there where they sit, and in fact it's one of the shadiest parts of the greenhouse. And in a way, I sort of don't give them the best conditions because I know that of the orchids that I've got, they are one of the most tolerant, so they get sort of relegated to a part of the greenhouse that I think other plants might not do very well in. However, it does do well, and if you get a chance to grow one of the Coelogyne intermedias, I think they're a really good plant to grow, providing you have cool, moist, shady conditions, of course. Lovely.